Welcome to Sky. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to Sky and this Men for Inclusion event in conjunction with Sky Sports. I'm Ben, and I look after the creative for all of the sports at Sky. I'm also a member of Men for Inclusion, and having spoken to many people across industries through this group, I'm struck by the many similarities between them and sports broadcasting. We're all facing the same challenges when it comes to elevating the voices of women and making sure the culture is not just inclusive of all genders, but built by and for all genders. I'm a passionate believer that while sport can't fix the problems of society, it can definitely hold up a mirror to what's wrong and shine a light on the way forward. So the theme of tonight is They Think It's All Over, as it relates to gender equality. Spoiler alert here, it's definitely not. In 1966, when that phrase was famously uttered, women were banned from playing in English league grounds. This persisted until 1972, when the national team played their first game, almost exactly 100 years after the men's team started. Fast forward to today, and England are hours away from taking on Spain after topping the group in the Euros with a clean sheet, played to packed stadiums. In fact, the Euros is playing to record crowds across the tournament. It's a wonderful time to be in this industry of sports broadcasting, and we delight in capturing the drama and telling the stories of the athletes of all genders. We're proud to be standing with the leagues and broadcasters who are working to elevate women's sport. Whilst the exploits of elite sport inspire and delight us, whatever our industry, we need to ensure our culture is welcoming and inclusive to everyone. Whether it's finance, sports broadcasting, it's a job for everyone and all genders. We're all here because we want to be here, hopefully. We're going to talk about the experiences of men and women, and some of that is probably going to be challenging and perhaps even challenging personally. I'd like to extend my personal thanks to you all for being so open and for this desire to make a difference. As I read brilliantly, it's not about fixing the women or blaming the men, it's about a gender partnership. So I do this in that spirit. So, and with that, I'd like to invite my panel up onto the stage, please. Starting on my left here, Henny Koek is one of the youngest ever players to join the Ladies European Tour as an amateur, having been handpicked by Nick Faldo for his development team at the age of 11. After a decorated junior career, Henny turned pro in 2008, achieving 2 professional victories, before turning her talents to presenting and bringing her considerable expertise and irrepressible love for the game to Sky Sports Golf. And Henny joins us fresh from the old course at St Andrews, where she was up covering the Open. Henny Koek, everyone. Helen Fulkus is the Director of Multisports for Sky Sports, heading up the coverage and teams for boxing, darts, rugby, NBA, netball and GAA. Prior to that, she spent much of her decades-long career in cricket, and alongside her colleagues here and at the BBC and the ECB, developed the format and coverage of the inaugural 100 cricket tournament. She's also still the only woman to direct elite cricket on TV. And Mark Freed, as many of you in this room will know, founded E2W, focused on supporting women in their careers and helping the financial industry attract, recruit and retain them. He's a co-founder of Men for Inclusion, driving for more men to pick up this work and drive change. And in fitting with the theme of tonight, he's also a seriously great Masters water polo player who holds a Guinness World Record in the sport, believe it or not. This is a panel. So I'm going to kick off then with, let's start with you, Henny. So can I ask you to share your thoughts that pop into your head when you hear the words "they think it's all over" when it comes to diversity and inclusion?
Yes. Firstly, hi, everyone. The initial thought that pops into my head is that it hasn't really even started yet. I have a lot of mixed feelings. I think I feel, on the one hand, that it has been incredibly tough coming through golf and now into the sports world in general and broadcasting. And so yes, on the one hand, it has been incredibly tough, but then simultaneously, I have emotions that I'm very proud of sort of breaking through the men's world in so many different ways. So,
yeah, look, I mean, it's clear it's far from over, and I think more importantly, thinking about the experiences of any minority group in any situation should never be over. And I think it feels as if we're just at the start of a journey of thinking about it more from a culture perspective than just representation. And that actually also feels quite exciting for me as well. And I think if we can move to a place where skills such as active listening, empathy, and challenging your own assumptions are really rewarded and recognised in the workplace, that will be a really, really positive step forward.
Yeah. Two points that pop into my head when you say they think it's all over. And by the way, I was there in 1966, a young boy. But we mustn't forget, as you said in your introduction, Ben, women were excluded from football and playing football at that time. In fact, they were probably excluded from playing all of our major sports. How much did that cost our society? No female role models, no aspirations, none of the benefits of playing team sports. People of my generation were brought up thinking that girls can't kick footballs and can't throw balls. How much did that cost? And of course, we've seen this week, girls can do these things, women can do these things. But conversely, the other side of that coin is men have, in many ways, been excluded from gender diversity initiatives as well. It was not about them when we were talking about diversity. Men are not interested in it. Men are biased. Men are aggressive. Biased, unconsciously, aggressive in a micro way. And then they're just given diversity targets. It's not surprising, perhaps, with that background, that for men, D&I isn't all over. And as you said, for many, it's just starting.
Listen, I think it's fair to say that golf is a sport that historically tends to skew very male and across the board. And this is clearly changing, but men still make up the majority of the athletes that we see on TV, the fans that we see on the course or at home, and even the programme teams, both on and off screen. So give us an idea, like we're talking about culture, what does it feel like to be a woman in those environments?
I think from a performance point of view, having to feel like you have to be a certain way to perform at your peak instead of being the sort of softer, gentler side of you, you feel like you have to switch yourself to being a more aggressive, focused in a different way side of you, and the other side sort of gets left behind. And then onto another area, it's all of the networking to get sponsorships. And I turned down multiple sponsorships in the past when I was playing professionally, just because I felt like it was, sexualized and it was uncomfortable. And then you're in a pro-am dinner and the guy moves a bit too close to you. And there's just all this brain energy that has to be used up in so many different scenarios, from a young girl into a professional woman, that men just don't have. Yeah. So that playing field, it just doesn't feel even. And it's, like I said, that's nothing to do with the fact that men and women don't have equal opportunity at clubs and access. That's sort of the tip of the iceberg. It's all of the other stuff on so many different levels. I played a pro-am once as a professional, and I had the, what is it called? The he-Peter? Yeah, I was playing with him. And he couldn't, it's all the little comments as well that are exhausting, like are you going to outdrive me today? Yeah, probably, but it's not the first time I've seen it. You'll have to go and deal with it when you get home, not me. And that's all the way round. And, how is it on the women's tour? Oh, all of you are so friendly compared to the men. And like all of those things that you just sort of take and move on from. Then you get in being an ally is such a powerful thing to be for someone.
Yeah.
Because when you're an ally, you're someone's safe space.
Yeah. Which
is huge. I think we all know people that are our safe space that we can go to and just breathe out. I'm safe with you. I can be myself. I can speak freely without anything.
And picking up a little bit on that, so Henny and Helen, you're both incredibly successful women in your respective fields, and as well as being proud mothers. I'm going to point out that Gary and Mark are very proud fathers too, but it's impossible to ignore the differences in experience between men and women here. And I really don't want to use any cliches about having it all, but I'm kind of worried that the worlds of finance and sports and others will have lost many brilliant women, to your point, Mark, that lost these brilliant women to whom the playing field was tilted just too much against them. So maybe Helen, you could pick it up. Like, how hard is it, and more importantly, maybe what needs to change, like in this?
Yeah, I think sport is a really interesting area when it comes to being a mum and coming back to work, having had children, because sport it doesn't happen 8 till 6, Monday to Friday, when nurseries are traditionally open. It happens in the evenings, on weekends. It doesn't go to time. You know, cricket can be over in 3 days, 5 days. It's quite hard to plan childcare around that. And I think that if we, as sports organisations, be it media, rights holders, governing bodies, if we really, really want to talk about gender equality and parity, we have to talk about that when sport is played, and the childcare issue. And I feel really strongly that we need to approach it with flexible mindsets rather than sort of fixed patterns. And I've always found it quite nonsensical since I've had children that we're asked, you know, if your child's 9 months old, to come up with an idea of what you want your working week to look like when you might still be breastfeeding, or your baby's largely just taking milk, whereas in 10 months' time it looks very different and the needs of the child are really different. So I'd love to see a world where we can kind of approach maternity leave and having children from a more holistic point of view, and it's based on the needs of the mother and the child, and it evolves rather it being this prescriptive sort of functional question of hours.
So I'm gonna flip it over onto Mark now. I feel like we've made a moral case for doing this, that it's right to support equality. But let's talk numbers. What's the benefit to the business? Why is this just a moral thing, or you know, we've got a lot of business leaders in the room. What's the actual cost of not doing this?
I think I just pick up on some points there as well that you made, Henny. I think we talk about gender diversity in the workplace. We need to also talk about gender diversity domestically. And, you know, there are a lot of my compatriots, my friendship group, who look back on their lives and think they would have liked to have spent more time with their children. They would have liked that opportunity and regret not taking it or not being able to take it. I think one of the benefits of inclusionism is that we can throw off those male stereotypes. We can share parental. Let's talk about parental leave, not maternity leave, because a lot of men would like the opportunity to spend more time with their children as well and take on some of those roles. Others maybe not. Getting back to the question though, business. Listen, the business case for this is well proven. You know, it's more innovative, more profitable, more successful businesses that are sustainable, growing, that can attract the best staff, that are just great places to work. They're happier, more successful. There's too little effort being put into driving change, and quite often that effort is in the hands of a small number of people within the firm, and typically women or other people from underrepresented groups. Tim sitting in the front here, we didn't mention disability. You know, disability is a big thing as well. Too few proper resources, well-funded resources to make this happen. But also too many people thinking this isn't about them. For men in particular, this is all about you. Now we're talking about inclusivity, it's all about you. Unfortunately, diversity came before I, and diversity wasn't about straight, white, middle-class guys that look like me. It was about everybody else. Now we're talking about inclusivity. This is a great opportunity for men. It's an amazing time for us to throw off those male stereotypes that bound us and be able to be ourselves. Inclusive workplaces are not just more successful, they're better places to work. I don't want to work with a group of people that look and think exactly like me. Diverse thought is great, but also they're healthier. There's less mental stress. There's less suicidal thoughts in men. Inclusive men, research shows, have happier relationships, both at work and at home. But also there's the old opportunity in choice. Do we want to wind the clock back to the days where we followed in our father's footsteps, where society said you were doing you were born here, you were educated there, therefore you do this role. We've got so much more opportunity and choice now to be ourselves, to be our authentic selves through inclusivity. And if the flip side of that is that we have to think and consider other people who maybe don't look like us and don't think like us in the big scheme of things, that's a very small payoff. You know, we work in environments where the cultures, the behaviours, the values have been created by white men historically, straight white men. We need to change those. We've got the opportunity now to get hold of those cultures, question our behaviours, question our values, to create an inclusive environment that's much better for everybody.
That's an interesting point about cultures. I was going to pick up, because we want all more work to be going into these initiatives. But like Helen, I wanted to pick up with you. Everyone probably in this room has been involved in corporate initiatives, but how much of this is something that we need to do at the corporate and the management and the leadership level, and how much of it is the actual on the ground culture in an organisation?
I think ultimately culture is everything, because sort of messaging and initiatives can be meaningless if it's not the actual lived experience of the women in your organisation. And I think that it's just about thinking what that looks like. Say if there are very few women in your team, you know, how often might you get to the end of a meeting and there actually hasn't been a female voice on that meeting? You know, are women, in Gary's talk earlier, given a certain type of work? Are certain questions or topics of conversation more thrown towards the way of men than women? And I think there are other informal ways that women can find themselves excluded. WhatsApp groups, golf days, trips to the pub. You know, it might be that there's a perception that maybe women don't play golf, or, you know, that you don't want to go to the pub because you might have to get back for the kids, or you don't want to be on that WhatsApp group because you might not find the banter funny, or, you know, and all of these might come from a good place, but actually what you're doing is forming a sort of workplace and a sort of an environment where women aren't included, because it's incredibly demoralizing to feel that relationships are being formed, ideas are being discussed, that you're in a place where you're not a part of. And I mentioned golf just because I worked on cricket for 20 years, and golf is what happens on days off and when early finishes.
And here's a question for you then, Ellie. So hearing everything we've heard, I always think it's really good to have a visual about how good this could be. Like, what does good look like? What does the world look like if we get this right?
Is sort of culture on a day-to-day level. And I think as a woman on a day-to-day level, I would surmise that you want to feel seen and heard at the same time as being able to be yourself fully. All sort of emotionally intelligent, which go hand in hand, soft, which, you know, intelligent, different viewpoint on things. I think you just want to 100% be able to relax into being yourself.
I want to just, I'm slightly out on time, but I do want to see if there's any questions from the audience as well. Has anyone got any questions? Time for a couple, if anyone's got any questions.
I was just going to ask the panel, what do you think is the most help you could appreciate from a male ally? What would you most like them to do for you?
Suggest to the men in the audience to listen to that, but also to turn the mirror on yourself. Think about how your behaviours, how your values, the assumptions that you might make really affect those women around you. Understand their lived experience, and then think about what changes you need to make to move to the world that we all want. But also look around and call out people who aren't living up to those behaviours and values that we want, and call them out or call them in. we can't do this. We can't just leave this to other people. We need to do it ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. Can I just say thank you to everyone for what I hope everyone has found this to be a fascinating discussion. I certainly have. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for our panel. Yeah.